In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Hi, welcome to the In the Last Days television program with myself, Martin Blackham. Natalie says hello to you today. She's behind the scenes. And we have a very special guest in the studio in Jerusalem, here in Israel. It's David Rubin, former mayor of Shiloh. Welcome to the studio, David. Great to have you across again.
Thank you.
Here in Har Adar. You're originally an American by birth. And you're the author of The Islamic Tsunami, as well as your new book, Peace for Peace, which we're going to be especially talking about on the program today. David has an extensive knowledge about terrorism, Israel and the United States and Israel relationships. He's been a guest speaker on news channels and on Fox News, CBN News, Focus Today, and then recently you spoke on WRKO Radio in Boston, where there was the tragedy of the Boston attack. You're the founder and president of the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, and maybe we'll, on this program this week, we'll talk a bit about that. But we want to come straight back to what we were talking about last week, which was from your book, Peace for Peace, to explain a proposed peace deal which would be an excellent way for Israel to handle the peace process. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I've long said that the problem with the peace process for the past 35 years is that we've pretty much been banging our proverbial land for peace heads against the wall for some 35 years. And it doesn't work. You know, this whole concept of Israel being this tiny little country, handing over its biblical heartland, its strategic, geographically strategic mountainous areas that overlook our only international airport, to hand that over to an armed band of terrorists led by the Islamic Jihad and Fatah and Hamas and Al-Qaeda, it makes absolutely no sense. So what I'm saying is we need to have a different kind of peace plan. We need to have a peace for peace plan, not land for peace, peace for peace. If they want peace, we're happy to make peace with them, but it can only be done according to my 10-point plan, which I have for the benefit of this program, condensed into 4 points, and those 4 points are based on biblical guidelines, historical precedent, and common sense. And that's where we need to start.
And you were speaking about, maybe you can give the viewers the different numbers for the ones, because we got up to number 2. Or I think
yes,
last week.
When we spoke in the last program, but so I'll just rehash the first 2 quickly so all of the new viewers will understand. The entire land of Israel, according to my peace plan, Peace for Peace, the entire land of Israel, all the way from the Euphrates River to the Mediterranean, from the Nile of Egypt in the south, all the way up to Lebanon. All of this area is part of the historic biblical land of Israel and is the legitimate inheritance of Israel, a divine trust, if you will, that we have to take care of. On the other hand, a big part of that land isn't in our possession. What is in our possession is from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River, from Egypt in the south up to Lebanon in the north. All of that area currently in our possession is the sovereign area of Israel and should not be handed over, not 1 inch, not 1 millimeter should be handed over to any other foreign entity. And what that means is that no quasi-governmental agency or authority can exist within those borders, and that includes the Palestinian Authority. So that's the first point. And it's a point that needs to be made very clear, because the problem that we've had with the peace process is that Israel sometimes gives out mixed messages. On one hand, the Prime Minister says, well, we're for the two-state solution. We're for land for peace. And then on the other hand, he says, well, this is our historical homeland, and none of this ambiguous message. We have to have a clear message. This is the God-given land of Israel, and we're operating according to biblical guidelines from here on in. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, Israel extends its hand in peace to all of its neighbors, including all of the Arab nations, all the Islamic nations that surround us, including all of the residents that live within the boundaries of the land of Israel that's in Israel's possession. Which, of course, brings us to point number three. Point number three allows for a path to loyal citizenship for all residents of Judea and Samaria, which is the area that's known as the West Bank to much of the world. This path to loyal citizenship includes all residents, Jewish residents, non-Jewish residents, everyone who is not a citizen can take this path to loyal citizenship. So what does it entail? It entails a 2 to 3 year course in Zionist Jewish biblical history and good citizenship. It includes, at the end of the course, an oath of loyalty that will be taken by each of these potential citizens, an oath of loyalty to the Jewish state of Israel. And finally, national service, military or civilian national service for all citizens in the land of Israel. And that, it seems to me like that is a basic, because everyone in Israel has to perform some sort of national service, whether military or civilian. It's a good thing. It teaches volunteerism. It teaches good citizenship. And anyone who follows this path to loyal citizenship will become a full-fledged citizen in the state of Israel.
And if you want to know more about what David is proposing, you can get the book Peace for Peace, your latest book, David, hot off the press.
Yes.
And they can get that at your website.
DavidRubinIsrael.com.
And as you get David's book, they're going to be actually helping the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, of
That's
which
right.
you're the president. So,
all net proceeds go to the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, which initiates and supports projects for children who've been traumatized by terrorism in the biblical heartland of Israel.
So as you get David's book, you're not just getting all the information that we're talking about on the program today. I know that a lot of you will want to have this book. I certainly think it'll help a lot of people because not so much for you, but when you have to explain this to maybe work colleagues or friends or family, this will really help you to explain what's going on in Israel, particularly about what's the so-called peace process and the so-called Palestinian territories, and also this thing that's bandied around all the time, the two-state solution. Now, one of the difficulties we have, David, at the present time is the media, isn't it, in the so-called Palestinian territories or that area. They've got the media there is glorifying terrorism, and not just that, but the other issue. If we come back to, you were saying about loyal citizens, one of the things in a peace process is that is demilitarization. In other words, that people lay down their arms, such as happened in the Irish peace process. But in Israel, well, I can't understand, David, what's happened. The Israeli government is arming the Palestinians by them having their own police
Well,
force.
that's the whole thing, and that's why I call for the complete ending of this Palestinian Authority, because what it has become through the autonomy plan has been that it has become a military authority and a means with which to arm these terrorists. So I'm saying, end of the Palestinian Authority. Israel is the sole sovereign authority, and the individual residents, if they want to make peace, then they are being given a chance to have a full peace and full citizenship in the state of Israel. Now, you might ask the question, well, what happens if they refuse the offer of loyal citizenship, which undoubtedly will happen. There will be many of them who will refuse the offer. And if they refuse the offer because they are obstinately hostile to the state of Israel, then there isn't much that we can do about that as far as convincing them. You know, we would try, but if we can't convince them to take the path to loyal citizenship, then a small number of them who would be helpful to the state of Israel in some way could remain here. Otherwise, they'd be given a stipend and be encouraged to move to a different country. Now that plan of encouraging the transfer of these non-citizens who are hostile to the state of Israel certainly has historical precedent in many countries in the world. In fact, at the end of World War II, it should be pointed out that the Allies, they didn't say to the Nazi Party and to Adolf Hitler, we want to sit down and negotiate with you. We want to, let's come to the table, Adolf. Come to the table and talk to us. We'll even give you some goodwill gestures. No, none of that. They said, we won, you lost, these are the terms of the peace, and you know what? There may have been some differences among the Allies about what to do, but in the end, the Allies came to an agreement and an understanding that there would be a transfer of populations across borders. And because of that transfer, and here we're talking about millions of people who were transferred over borders from Poland to Germany, Germany to Poland, it was done for the sake of peace. Okay, so what I'm talking about here is a path to loyal citizenship for the sake of peace, and if they choose to be full citizenship, citizens, loyal citizens of the state of Israel, well, they're welcome to be. They're welcome here. But if they choose to remain hostile to the state of Israel, and they choose not to accept the path of loyal citizenship, well, we would encourage them and help them to relocate in a different country. And as I said, this certainly has historical precedent, and that transfer of populations in the peace plan at the end of World War II worked. Because if you look at Europe today, not only is there peace between nations, but there is also the European Union, which is even more than peace between nations. True, there may be disagreements about economic policy, but the fact is that there has been peace since the end of World War II.
And the present situation, what you might not realize, and this was just in the news today, but there was 2 Palestinian policemen who've been arrested for killing, which is terrorism, yes, for killing a Jewish man at the Joseph's tomb. That was in the news today, and you know, this is not a way for a police force to act, to go around killing.
No, they have never been a peaceful entity. Since the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, which was the successor of the Palestine Liberation Organization that Yasser Arafat headed, the Palestinian Authority is now headed by Mahmoud Abbas. And I should point out, and this in relation to what you were saying before about the terrorism, that the Palestinian Authority has not only not stopped terrorism, but it has encouraged and financed terrorism. Thousands of documents have been found by the Israeli army in its periodic searches in the Palestinian Authority areas to stop terrorist attacks. And in these documents, we see clearly that the Palestinian Authority has been financing terrorism. It has been supporting the terrorists who were in jail. It has supported their families. It has given a stipend. It has given a payment for every single terrorist attack that has been committed against Israelis. No, those who steal cars from the Palestinian Authority, they do not get a stipend. Those criminals who were in jail for rape of women in the Palestinian Authority areas, they don't get a stipend. The ones who perform a terrorist attack and who rape Jewish women, Israeli women, yes, they get the stipend. It's clearly an act of war by the Palestinian Authority being carried out against the State of Israel.
And this money that's been used for supporting terrorists is being siphoned from the money that's used for support that people in Europe, that countries in Europe are giving. I think millions of dollars
have been given by the European Union. Millions of euros have been handed over to the Palestinian Authority, ostensibly for the sake of peace, but they haven't been used for development. They have been used for development of the Palestinian terrorist organizations. And they have been used to attack Israeli civilians and to develop their army, which just makes them bolder and less willing to really arrive at a peace agreement.
And when we see the media, the typical portrayal of the media on the BBC or other networks, many of them are to blame for this, is that when we see the Palestinians, we see them in poverty, we see them lacking food or whatever, and yet when they receive this money, it's been given to the terrorists or terrorist families. You know, those who are in prison, the ones, their families are being supported by money which is ostensibly being given to help feed those who are hungry. Do you think people know about this?
Well, people don't know a lot of things. Let me just point out very clearly that first of all, as one who lives in the heart of Samaria, and our town of Shiloh has Arab villages on both sides of it. In those two villages, there are mansions, there are villas that are quite, much larger than the houses that we live in Shiloh. So to say that they're all suffering economically is just total nonsense. It's total rubbish. And the fact is that there are people who live in the Palestinian Authority areas who are better off, and there are those who are less off. But the fact is that the Palestinian Authority is responsible for whatever poverty may exist within their areas, because yes, they take those euros and they take those dollars and they pump it into their terrorist organizations and their so-called police, they like to call them. They are an army, and you know what? We're in the summertime now, and as we speak. And do you know that in the Palestinian Authority they have summer camps for children? Well, my Shiloh Israel Children's Fund that helps terror victim children, we also support summer camps. In our summer camps, the children learn to swim. In our summer camps, the children learn to play sports, and they also have some learning time where they learn Bible. But in the Palestinian Authority summer camps, they teach them to capture hostages. They teach them to use AK-47 assault rifles, like the ones that my 3-year-old son and I were wounded with. They teach them to attack Israeli civilians. Now, Martin, I am not exaggerating when I tell you that we are talking about 9, 10, 11-year-old children. We're talking about children whose innocence of childhood has been robbed from them by these terrorists, by these Muslim terrorists. I should also point out to you that not only has the innocence of childhood been robbed from them, but the Palestinian Authority leadership was elected by the residents of those areas, of the Palestinian autonomous areas. Now, isn't that interesting? On one hand, they complain that Israel is causing poverty in the areas. At the same time, they complain that Israel is repressing their people. At the same time, the media, the lamestream media, justifies their acts of terrorism and justifies what they do, saying, well, it's the Palestinian Authority leadership that supports the terrorists and doesn't give money over to people who could use the economic assistance. But they elected them in the year 2006, excuse me. They had an election in the Palestinian Authority. They elected the Hamas terrorist organization. They elected the Fatah terrorist organization. What do they expect?
And you have personal experience of and we're talking with David Rubin about his new book, Peace for Peace. You have personal experience, David, of the peace process and the results, because maybe you can talk a bit about this. What happened to you and your son when you were traveling to Jerusalem just after Oslo?
Well, we were coming back from Jerusalem, and I had my 3-year-old son buckled behind me in the baby seat. So we're traveling. I'm driving on the road. Halfway home, back from Jerusalem to Shiloh, suddenly the car was hit by a massive hail of bullets. The bullets were flying. I saw them whizzing past my eyes, literally a few centimeters from my eyes. And when the bullets hit, I realized immediately that they were shooting, that it wasn't rocks being thrown, which sometimes is the case. And I felt the bullet go into my left leg. The car went completely dead. The blood started coming out of my leg all over the place. And I quickly tried to start the car to get away from the terrorists because the car was just coasting down a hill. I turned the ignition. The car was dead, absolutely dead. It wasn't starting. It was coasting down the hill. The terrorists are still shooting from the side of the road. Then I remembered I had my 3-year-old sitting behind me in the baby seat. Horrified, I turned around to him and I asked him, my son's name is Rubin, or we call him Ruby. I said, Ruby, are you okay? His eyes were staring wide open at me. His mouth was wide open. He looked like he had a pleading or look on his face. He wanted to cry or to scream, but he couldn't for some reason. And I thought that he was in shock. I didn't see any blood on him, so I figured that he's okay, he's just in shock, and that I better just get away from the terrorists. So I quickly started turned the ignition again to start the car. It wasn't starting. I turned it again and again, and I shifted gears. In my automatic car, I shifted from drive to park to neutral, trying each time to turn the ignition. The car was not starting. Finally, I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I turned the ignition. The car started suddenly as if it had never started before. I hit the gas, and I drove 170 kilometers an hour to get to, hoping I could get to the next community up the road, which is called Ofra, hoping I could get an ambulance there. I pull up to the gate of Ofra. The whole time blood is coming out of my leg. My body is shaking. The car was shaking from driving so fast. I pull up to the gate of Ofra. I shout out to the guard at the gate. Now, mind you, every community in Samaria has a metal gate in the front of it because that's the only way we can keep out the Islamic car bombers. So I shout to the guard at the gate, please, ambulance, get me an ambulance. He didn't seem to hear me. There was a young woman on the side of the road. She started jumping up and down, screaming, ambulance, ambulance, don't you hear? At that point, everyone who was within sound's reach came running up to the car. The gas station attendant from the gas station across the street ran up to the car. He pulled open my door. He ripped off my shirt, wrapped up my left leg to stop the blood flow. He said, "I'm also a paramedic. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." And he handed me his cell phone. He said, "Quick, call your wife." My hand was shaking too much. I couldn't dial. He dialed it for me. And I told my wife I've been shot in the leg. Hopefully soon an ambulance will be coming to take me to the hospital, and Ruby is okay. Well, must have been a moment later. An ambulance zooms up. Two paramedics jump out of the ambulance. They run up to my car. One of them starts unbuckling my son from the baby seat. And I said, "No, please, please, sir, leave him alone. Leave him alone. He's just in shock. He needs to be with his Abba. He needs to be with his dad." And he said, "No, sir, I have to take him out." And he takes him out. He cradles him in his arms. He starts running at break speed to the ambulance, shouting, "He's also been shot. He's been shot in the head." A bullet had gone into his head where the skull meets with the neck, we later found out, causing a skull fracture and internal bleeding in the cerebellum. They quickly wrapped his head with bandages, put an oxygen mask on his face, and whisked us both on stretchers into the ambulance to take us to the hospital in Jerusalem, where I was pronounced the 1,000th victim of terrorism, to be hospitalized just in that hospital and just in that past year and a half.
And if you're going to want to hear more of David's story, you're going to have to watch next week. Thank you so much for being with us this week. Don't forget, you can get hold of David's book, Peace for Peace, at his website. And remember, we're living in the last days.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings, or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time, same station for the next program from In the Last Days.